All right, so what I want to do is I want to go through every hero in this game and talk about my thoughts just for you to be able to get an idea of how somebody plays her or how she should be played if you're new, or for you to watch and talk about how shitty my opinions are. So I have like 215 hours in Darkest Dungeon at this moment. Hellion is probably my favorite hero because in all my she carried many of my runs in the first Darkest Dungeon. She's carried many of my runs in this one, and I love her, and she's fantastic at what she does. So she's a frontliner, high damage, has some bleed to her, has some bloodlust to her. So to get into the skills, so these are the 5 that I run. So it's Wicked Hack, Iron Swan, Toe to Toe, Adrenaline Rush, Howling End. So the way I play her, Wicked Hack is your bread and butter. You're able to hit the front 2 ranks. You're able to hit plus 50% damage off a combo, so that can be really good in the right situation. Iron Swan, be able to hit the 4 rank. This is one of the few skills in the game that can hit the 4 rank that isn't a dot. You have Abyssal Artillery from the Occultist, but it doesn't do the amount of damage. It doesn't have the beef that an Iron Swan does. And if you're master it, you can actually combo. So you can combo in the back line, so you can do something along the lines of, with the runaway, if you're doing that, you can give some extra, get some burn off to the one next. It's always just nice to have combos. You can do whatever with it. So toe-to-toe is just, I like to have, just in case you're going against like a cultist fight or something that's hitting your back line, just to give a turn for you to breathe and for her to just tank a couple of hits. So the good thing about this one is it's a movement ability that you can use in the front rank. So whether you move or not, it still does what it needs to do. So in Immobilizer too, so it's good versus the fight in the boss fight in the feeder with the baby, so that whoever in the 2 rank is, if they have the hunger token, they can't jump to the front. And super good about toe to toe is that if you upgrade it, it actually removes the winded tokens, which can be really good, as opposed to something like Adrenaline Rush that you have to be under 33% health. For this, you can just do it whatever. There's no cooldown on it, so you can do it every turn. You can taunt the hell out of them. You can get rid of the winded every turn that you have the ability to. And it's just nice to be able to have. So Adrenaline Rush gets rid of bleed and winded tokens, which if you run the Ravager path, she has a chance to bleed at the beginning of every turn. So to be able to have a consistent, relatively consistent way to get rid of that is pretty good. Upgrading it removes all dots, which can be really useful. A kind of self battlefield medicine, or self suffer from the Flagellant. She's just very self-sufficient. She does a lot of damage, and she can pretty much do everything herself. She doesn't need a ton of help. Maybe some stress help would be nice, but for the most part, she pretty much does everything herself, because she's just an animal. So Howling End I like a lot. Howling End is burst. It is up there with Lunge and Burning Stars is the highest, some of the highest damaging abilities in here. It moves you back 1, but really that's not a big of a deal. That big of a deal if you're using her in the 1, because she can pretty much use everything in the 1 rank that she can use in the 2nd rank. So it just does a ton of damage. Lowers the cooldown. If you upgrade it, it brings the low end damage from 8 to 10, the high end damage from 14 to 18. It's just nice to end a fight, especially because then that way you don't have to worry about a winded token. If you get a crit token, you can really just blow a lot of things up, again, in the way that you can with like a Lunge or with a Burning Stars. It's just really nice to have in your back pocket, similar to Adrenaline Rush. Really nice to have in your back pocket in case you really need it. So about the abilities that I don't use personally, I don't use Barbaric Yop, because Hellion and the Highwayman are the same, that I want them to just do damage. That is their job. I don't care about utility. I don't care about them buffing the team in any way. They are the main damage dealers in all likelihood when you run them with your comps. So sell out for that. I don't like having them have any sort of utility. Just be damage. That's all I need you to focus on. It does give weak tokens, and it does get rid of stealth, which can be good. And when you upgrade it, you can stun. You can get in theory a double stun, right? If they were if the 1 rank and the 2 rank on the other team are both have combos, because it does hit 2 ranks. It's her only AoE ability. So that's good for what it's worth. But again, you have to worry about, you have to imagine these as 2-turn abilities, because you have to get rid of those winded tokens and you should not be um just going through the fight with the winded token minus the damage, minus the speed. You need her damage, you need her speed, you need to get rid of those by the next turn, obviously, ideally, but you need to get rid of those as soon as you can. You can't holy water it, you can't indiscriminate science it to get rid of it. You have to get rid of it on her own. So is Barbaric Yop worth a 2-turn ability? No, not in my opinion. If you want to have a little utility on her, more power to you. I think you're doing an injustice to the Hellion if you're not having her just go full damage. So if it bleeds, does a little bit less damage than Wicked Hack, 3 to 6 versus 4 to 8 on Wicked Hack. I leave her in the front rank. I leave her in the 1 rank all the time. I never move her out unless like I Howling End or something, right? But this is, I would say the 1 rank is like that S tier. That is the best way that you can play her. If you just like this better, you're having a drop off, at least in my opinion, in what she's able to do. But if you do want to put her in the 2, don't put her in the 3 rank. You can, don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't. But you can put her in the 2 in theory, and you can go in if it bleeds kind of things. Depending on what path you run, she can get extra bleed piercing and crit on the bleed abilities. It's, to me, it's just subpar. It's subpar. If you want to do it for the hell of it, it's not bad, but it's subpar. And again, like I said, I want her to just do damage. I don't want her to have to spend turns to do damage or have sort of utility. So you talk about Bleed Out is the same kind of thing. So Bleed Out does the same damage as Wicked Hack. It does do a solid bleed, but again, you have to think of this as a 2-turn ability because of the Winded token. So is this worth, is a 4 or a 6 bleed worth a 2-turn ability? Honestly, probably. It probably is. The reason, I would just rather have Howling End just for the straight damage. Because essentially the 2 difference between these two is, would you rather do damage right now or would you rather do damage over the next 3 turns? And the Hellion is strong enough to where you should play her at the best of her ability, so you should run Howling End. Bleed Out, it's not bad though. It does do solid damage and it does have a fat bleed with it. If you wanted to do something like Cause of Death with the Plague Doctor, this would be a good setup for it. Again, you have to remember, because of the Winded token, this is essentially a 2-turn ability. So Bloodlust, I would say, is the best ability that I don't run. It removes Winded token in essentially the best way that you can. So Adrenaline Rush, you have to be below 1/3 health to be able to do it. So it's not super consistent as far as getting rid of Winded tokens. Toe to toe, you have to put a mastery point into it. But from the base ability, being able to run Bloodlust, technically you could multiple turns in a row. There's no cooldown on it, and to be able to have plus 20 damage against something that's bleeding for the next 5 turns is pretty good. Upgrading it gives you a little bit of bleed resist, and it makes it plus 30% damage. I do like Bloodlust a lot, but to me it feels weird to use a skill on somebody like the Hellion that just doesn't do anything off 1 turn. It doesn't do anything. Like it gets rid of the Winded, obviously, but it's similar to Ruin with the Leper. You are going for the long term. It's a long term move, which for somebody like the Hellion, who you're essentially trading out one of these 2. So you're trading out 4 to 8 or 6 to 10 or whatever with strength tokens, with trinkets, blah, blah, blah. You're trading that for just getting rid of the Winded token, and then hoping that you can do some sort of combo style stuff in the next few turns with this bleed to make it worth it. To make it worth that 1 turn not being able to do much. It just feels a little weird to me. It's not bad to run, but it also doesn't have the same self-sufficiency with the healing and the getting rid of bleed in the same way that Adrenaline Rush does. To me, it's a subpar Adrenaline Rush. I'd rather have Adrenaline Rush personally. But, you know, if you were doing something like, if you were doing you wanted to use all these Winded, if you wanted to use these a lot, having Bloodlust, you know, just to be able to do that, or having to be able to you know, buff yourself in the future fight in something like a boss fight, it's probably worth it. It's not bad to run. Don't feel bad for running it if you want to run it. It's solid. Breakthrough, being able to ignore a guard is a unique ability in this game, and it's very good. To me, is it worth it? I don't think so, because this is a a 2-turn ability with the winded. So it moves her forward 2. Why would you need to move her forward 2? If unless you're planning on getting shuffled, in which case that's not bad. But again, you're winding yourself also with it. So it's a fine ability. It's one of those abilities that you would like to have if for some reason you could equip all of these, all 11 of these, but it doesn't work like that. You only get to pick 5. So if you only get to pick 5, you got to pick the 5 best. Breakthrough's okay. To me, it's not worth running. So Raucous Revelry, to go back to what I was talking about earlier, I don't want my Hellion to be utility. I want her to be the carry. I want her to be the one that does the most damage. This is good for self-sufficiency for getting rid of stress, but as a team-wide ability, it only gets rid of 1 stress. It's not really that great when you can have something like, the Jester being able to do 2 or 3 with the mastered ability. Bolster from the Man-at-Arms can do 2 if you master it. This is just weird to me. It's just weird. You could, if based on the healing part of it, when you could run instead of Adrenaline Rush, but again, you got to think that this is winding. So it's kind of, to me, just a worse Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush, getting rid of the winded token, getting rid of bleed, and giving her a little bit of health at the time and a little bit health for the next 3 turns is really, really good, as opposed to just a 1 heal and get rid of a little bit of stress. You're better off, in my opinion, running with a Jester, running with the Man-at-Arms, running with the Mineral Witch Springwater, running with Laudanum, whatever. This just feels like a worse option based on all of those. Howling End does a lot of damage. Really good to end fights, because that way you don't have to worry about the winded token. So you talk about a boss fight. It's really good if you get a crit token, if you get a strength token, and you feel like you can get rid of that winded token and be okay. So this is the ability that should, this and Bleed Out are the 2 abilities that, when you think of something like a winded token that is essentially a 2-turn ability, you think a lot of damage. I don't think you think a lot of utility, at least me personally. Howling End, Bleed Out, both solid options. Howling End does a ton of damage, 8 to 14, and then it goes 10 to 18 with a little bit extra crit, lowers the cooldown. It's just very, very good. It's really nice, similar to Adrenaline Rush, just to sort of have in your back pocket, and similar to Toe-to-Toe, really. So if you get shuffled, if you need to taunt, all 3 of these are very, very good to just have in your back pocket. And then Wicked Hack and Iron Swan are just what you're beating throughout the fight. You're doing whatever depending on what you get to hit. And then, okay, I have a crit token. I should use Howling End. I have, we need to finish off a boss. We need to finish off something that's going to screw us up really bad. That's when you pull Howling End out and just fuck it up. So her paths. Obviously the Wanderer path. Ravager is the path that I run. So to be able to have her in the 1 rank and have plus 20% max health, super, super good, especially versus something like an Occultist that hits the fronts a ton. Plus 25% damage. If whatever game it was, if we said, hey, we can make your character a little more tanky and do more damage at the same time, that would pretty much immediately be the one that you go to. So that is the best. Minus 33% blood resist piercing. What that means is it gives them a 33% bleed resist. So if their base is 50, when you are the Hellion's turn, it gives them an 83, whoever you attack. So you're not using Bleed Out, you're not using If It Bleeds with this, which is fine, to be honest, because if you're doing plus 25% damage, you should be going full damage anyways. Iron Swan, Howling End, Wicked Hack. The 3 bleed, 25% chance at the start of the turn to do a 3 bleed is bad, and it can screw you up. But in my opinion, it's fine for how the positives of the path. It's not that much of a negative in my opinion. If you run Adrenaline Rush, you can get rid of that. Even if you don't run Adrenaline Rush, you can carry bandages on her, you can carry medicinal herbs on her, you can have the Plague Doctor with. You can get rid of that pretty well, at least because it's the beginning of the turn. So it's not impossible to deal with, in my opinion, and I think it's well worth plus 20% max health, plus 25% damage. If you are doing Stygian runs also, keep in mind the Stygian run, or the Stygian torch does minus 20% max health, so this offsets that. So that's pretty good. You don't have to worry about being super squishy. Anyways, speaking of being super squishy, we have Berserker. So Berserker, minus 20% max health. Again, keep in mind with Stygian, this is with the torch, minus 40% max health. To have her in one of the front 2 spots and having that little health is going to be an issue. especially with the cultist ones. If you're not running Stygian, minus 20% max health, you might just be okay with. Plus 10% Death Door resist is pretty good, but at the end of the day, it's a random chance anyways. You might get screwed on a 90, you might get screwed on an 80, whatever. So plus 33% bleed piercing, which is really, really good if you like bleed out, if it bleeds. There's certain trinkets that you can do some bleeds with. It's pretty good if that's what you want to go for. So I would say, what do you as far as which one of these to run? What are your opinions on her bleed abilities? It's pretty much what it is. If you like the bleeds, run Berserker, but keep in mind she's going to be not very tanky. If you don't care for the bleeds ones, run Ravager. In my opinion, there's not a huge reason to run Wanderer compared to these two. These are pretty good either way. The only reason I can think of is if you don't care for the bleed resist, the bleed piercing either way, and you want to have just to whatever health, you want to have your normal base health. Maybe, but I think these two paths are good enough and interesting enough and different enough that it's worth always running one no matter what you're doing. Keep in mind when I say that, I'm not pointing out Carcass, the old carcass here. And that's because, I'm going to be honest, this is probably the only path in the game that I have never tried. And the reason I have never tried is because I don't see any way that it's good. So, unless, I'm trying to think of some real niche ways. This is a sort of utility path for the Hellion, and if you're running a utility path on the Hellion, it's an odd choice. I don't see any way that this is worth it. We'll see this with a few different skills, few different heroes, few different paths. Really what it comes down to is how much effort, how much time, how many mastery points, for example, do you have to put into this hero or this path or whatever? How much do you have to change your comp around, your playstyle around, in order to play this at the top of the top of its the most useful that it can be, right? This is a perfect example of it requires you, it's the worst of both worlds. The top out, the very best you can play is not that great, and it requires you to move a lot of stuff around. So Barbaric Yop, to have a taunt on, it's probably fine. I'm sure it's nice, but even then you have a taunt with toe to toe. So why would you want to do Barbaric Yop instead of toe to toe? I don't know. Wicked Hack, being able to remove guards with Wicked Hack, really, really good. But not worth everything else. It's a little bit of stress relief off the crit. That's cool, I guess, but how often you're critting? You're not critting like that much. If you were critting a couple times a battle, 2, 3, 4 times a battle, that would be really good because she becomes even more self-sufficient. You can get rid of your own stress. I don't see any way this is worth it. And especially getting the Winded token at the beginning of every turn. So you are doing less damage and you have speed at the beginning of every single turn. So you're not using Wicked Hack, Howling End, Iron Swan to the best of its abilities. You're essentially doing some weird Raucous Revelry, if it bleeds or bleed out, sort of like weird dot utility Hellion build. And why would you do all that when you can just run the Jester? Why would you do all that when you can just run the Plague Doctor? You're sort of like forcing her into a role that's not that good. I don't see any reason this path is ever worth taking. If you are watching this and you are an absolute Carcass aficionado, feel free to roast me. That's fine. I would love to find out that I'm wrong. I just don't see any way that I'm wrong. Being able to switch into guard tokens based off of the Winded, that's cool, I guess, but man, no. I don't see any reason why you would run this, even like as you're trying to switch things up. No, I don't see it. Hellion is too good to you're handcuffing her and you're shoehorning her into some weird thing that she's not for. So I want to get into her trinkets. So her 3 trinkets that she have: the Bloodied Branch, gain on crit, a strength token, 66% chance. That's pretty good, to be honest. That's probably worth running the trinket just normally. Like, you don't even have to nothing else. These other two, you could just run that. Just, it's good enough, at least depending on where you are in your run. If you're at the very end, it's probably not good, but if you can find some way to consistently get crits, that's pretty good. If it bleeds, if you are running if it bleeds, being able to add +2 bleed to that, pretty good. Again, I don't think you should be really running if it bleeds as it is, but if you do, that could make it that could buff it a little bit to make it even a little bit better. So she's never should be in the rank 4 anyways. You can probably go into a fight risking that she will never be in the 4th rank unless you get shuffled. That's annoying, but you're trying to get her out anyways. So, Rotten Tomato. Again, it's a 2 rank Hellion. Little weird in my opinion. Plus 30% damage is pretty good. If you want to combo that with a Howling End, that's a ton of damage. You know, you could Wicked Hack from there. It's pretty good. If it bleeds, you know, whatever. And being able to apply a combo on hit on breakthrough and add a negative token, that's pretty cool. Is it worth getting? No. I mean, if you have it, I pretty much exclusively have her in the 1st rank, so I've never once used this. Maybe the plus 30% damage is good enough, but again, you have to make sure that you can kill whatever is in that 4 spot because you're not going to have Iron Swan to be able to do it. And keep in mind, breakthrough is essentially a 2-turn ability based on it's going to give you the winded token. So Empty Stein, whatever. This is the one that's very good. So especially if you run this with Ravager the way that I do, she's going to be bleeding a decent amount of the time. And again, like something in Cultist Fights, really, really good. Plus 25% damage. Just for bleeding a little bit, that's super, super good. And if you are running Adrenaline Rush, then you can get that bleed off if it starts getting too big or if it starts, you start getting kind of low health. So Barbaric Yop, adding a strength token to that, pretty good. Keep in mind, again, 2-turn ability because of the winded token. But to be able to add a strength token, if you run it anyways, that's pretty good. If you get this trinket, should you start running Barbaric Yop? No, in my opinion. But if you happen to run it anyways, being able to add a strength token, this is your trinket. This is really, really good. So 25% chance of getting a weak token on a bleed resist. It's not the worst in the world because in all likelihood, she probably has a 30% or so, depending on what trinkets or whatever that you're running, 30% or so bleed resist. So it'd be you would have to lose a 30% chance, or you would have to gain. I guess that would be positive in normal, but you would have to get a 30% chance, and then a 25% chance. And just to get a weak token or something, that's not so bad. If it was a winded token or a stun token or something like that, maybe it's something you'd have to worry about. You're probably fine having a weak token on 1 turn with the Hellion. And if you're fighting a fight that's that close anyways, that's just unfortunate timing. I love the Hellion. She's carried me many times in both games. I love her very much. She is very, very good. She is one of, I would say probably with the Man-at-Arms and the Highwayman, the plug-and-play style where you can just throw her in. Doesn't matter what comp it is for the most part. You throw her in. You don't have to play around her. You master her. You master her abilities if you can, and you just wreck whatever you're facing. I love her. If you ever have any questions about any of these heroes, but if you ever have a question about the Hellions, feel free to drop by in my chat and say hi and tell me what your opinions are. If my opinions are trash, feel free to tell me my opinions are trash. If you run her differently and it's maybe something that I didn't cover very well, that would be really interesting too. I'd very much welcome to learn different styles with her or with any of the heroes. This is just, in my opinion, the best way to do it. The Hellion is so good that you need to, in my opinion, be able to do as much damage as you can because she absolutely can carry your party. Don't push her into some weird stuff that she's not supposed to be doing. You know, again, if you have any opinions that they differ from mine, feel free. Come into my chat, post in the comments, tell me whatever you think about her. I will be going through all of these heroes and talking about my opinions on all of them. I just wanted to start with the Hellion because, frankly, it's an easy one. She doesn't change a ton. She just sits in there, and she just does a ton of damage. Make her like her lore, minus the sad part. Just an absolute savage. I love the Hellion. And thank you for watching.